In the early hours of April 26th, 1986, residents of an apartment building in Ukraine woke to something outside their windows. A blue light tearing through the night sky. It was fire, but unlike any fire they had ever seen. Mysterious like an aurora. Beautiful like fireworks. Parents woke their children and brought them outside. The kids laughed and ran through the white powder falling from the sky. Soft as snow, gentle as dust. No one knew that stepping on that powder was enough to destroy human cells. That the blue light was radiation, silently dissolving the human body from the inside out. And that night, there were people who ran toward that beautiful light. Firefighters. Many of them never made it home. Most people have heard of Chernobyl. But one question still remains. Why, on that night, didn't a single firefighter take even one step back? 25-year-old Vasily Ignatenko was asleep beside his wife, Lyudmila. 1:23 a.m. The phone rang. Fire at the plant. Report immediately. Vasily threw on his uniform. His wife stood, rubbing her eyes, watching him in the dark. He leaned down and kissed her forehead. He smiled. "I'll put out the fire and be back. Wake me up in the morning." She watched his back as he walked out the door. That was the last time she saw him the way he was. 1:28 a.m., 5 minutes after the explosion, Vasily's fire truck pulled up in front of reactor No. 4. The scene was chaos. Concrete debris scattered in every direction. Black smoke and flames roaring from the roof. Vasily and his crew grabbed their hoses and climbed up. "We need to stop here. No protective suits. No radiation detectors. Just the thin cotton uniforms they always wore and old helmets." Why? Not because of heroism. Not because they were fearless. They went in because they didn't know. And someone did know, and said nothing. That lie pushed countless young men into their deaths. The Soviet government never told the firefighters the truth, that the reactor core had gone critical and exploded. What the plant supervisors reported up the chain was a single line. Minor fire on the roof of reactor No. 4. The order given to the firefighters was just as simple. Stop the fire from spreading to the adjacent reactor No. 3. Lieutenant Pravik, the on-site commander, shouted to his men. "If this fire reaches reactor 3, it'll blow all the way to Moscow. We stop it here, no matter what." The firefighters climbed onto the roof. At their feet, something strange was scattered across the ground. Black, hard chunks. One firefighter kicked one aside without thinking. Another picked one up with his bare hands to clear the path. They weren't rocks. They were graphite blown out from inside the reactor core. So radioactive that standing next to one for a single minute was enough to destroy every strand of DNA in a human body. Tens of thousands of Roentgens per hour. Death sitting on the ground. The only radiation detector on site maxed out the moment it was switched on. The firefighters didn't know. They gripped their hoses and fought the fire surrounded by death. They couldn't see. Shortly after 2 a.m., something began to happen. One firefighter collapsed, retching violently. Then another. A metallic taste like copper flooded their mouths. Vision blurred. Skin burned. And here's what's strange. Watching their friends collapse one by one. Why didn't anyone let go of the hose? They could have left. Walking down those stairs right then meant surviving. But instead, they carried their fallen friends down, then turned around and climbed back up. Someone else collapsed. They carried him down and climbed back up again. But that raises another question. What were they really afraid of? Death? Or something else entirely? Maybe what terrified them most wasn't death. Maybe it was something else. Decades later, the survivors spoke quietly about that night. If we had walked away, the fire would have reached Reactor 3, And then, the city where my children slept, the streets where my wife lived, would have become a land of death. They gave up their lives to protect the people who still had homes to return to. 6 a.m., the fire was out. The worst-case chain reaction had been prevented, but the cost was devastating. 28 first responders, including Vasily, were airlifted to a specialized hospital in Moscow, their bodies blackened. When Lyudmila heard the news, she ran to Moscow. At the hospital entrance, doctors stopped her. "You cannot go in. That man is no longer your husband. He is a walking reactor. You will die too." Lyudmila looked at the doctor and said, "I don't have any children. Please, just let me hold his hand one more time." It was a lie. She was pregnant, she had found out just days before. The door to his room opened. The skin burned by radiation was peeling away, a little more each day. His entire body was covered in fluid and blood. His organs were dissolving, he vomited blood dozens of times a day. Through all of it, Vasily saw his wife walk through the door. He swallowed blood and found a smile. "It's dangerous here. Please go." Until his last breath, he was worried about her. 2 weeks after the explosion, Vasily Ignatenko closed his eyes holding his wife's hand. The tragedy didn't end there. The Soviet government refused to return. The firefighters' bodies to their families intact. Vasily's remains were sealed in a zinc coffin and welded shut. Concrete was poured over it. Buried deep in the ground, standing over a sealed concrete grave, Lyudmila wept. Then, months later, a crueler fate arrived. The baby growing inside her came into the world and died 4 hours later. Doctors couldn't explain it in medical terms, but Lyudmila believed it for the rest of her life, that her child had taken the death that was meant for her. And 40 years later, people are still asking the same question. Why didn't they run? Why didn't they walk away? Why did they stay? Maybe the answer was never heroism, never patriotism, never orders. Maybe it was something simpler, the quiet belief of ordinary young men who thought that someone had to stay because the people they loved still had a home to come back to. And perhaps that is why, 40 years later, we still remember the name, Vasily Ignatenko, because sometimes history remembers ordinary men, not because they were heroes, but because when everyone else would have walked away, they stayed.